Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Faisel Sayed,
And I'm Dr. Dan McCarter.
and you're listening to Faisel and Friends, where we believe access to primary care is a right, not a privilege. Today, we're talking to Dr. Danny Sands from the Society for Participatory Medicine about the magic of physician-patient collaboration. Let's dive right in. Dr. Sands, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Faisel. It's good to see you.
Great to see you, and let's get started. So,
Okay.
Dr. Sands, I big fan of what I've read about you online, but I'd love to hear your story. Why did you pursue medicine?
Wow, you're really going back now quite a ways because I've been doing this for a while. I pursued medicine, so I have no doctors in my family. The closest I came, besides going to my pediatrician, was that one of my father's best friends, a guy he played racquetball with at the JCC, was the head of neurology, the chief of neurology at the Cleveland Clinic. And as I was growing up, he would talk to me about his work. And when I got a little older, say in high school, he said, "Hey, you want to go on rounds with me?" And so he would take me on rounds with him at the Cleveland Clinic. I don't think you could do such a thing today, but back then you could. And I went on rounds with him, and he would bring me to different departments that were connected to neurology, see how they did different things, and learn about it. And I actually was able to opt out of health class and do a project there instead of taking health class in 11th grade, which I thought was awesome.
Wow.
So I wasn't yet convinced that I was going to do medicine, but of course he was egging me on in that direction. And one of the things that I learned from him and that really made me like medicine is I loved the diagnostic process. I loved creating a connection with patients, hearing and listening to their story, asking them questions, and then sort of reasoning out what could be going on with them and incorporating whatever necessary data and so on. That was fascinating to me. And I just really thought this was really cool. However, I didn't choose medicine as my career at that point. I was still young. But I kept it in mind. I said, medicine might be one of the things I did. I actually went to college at Brown. And one of the reasons I chose Brown was that I didn't have to choose anything early, and I could do a diversity of things without even selecting anything remotely the same. And so I actually went to Brown thinking that I'm either going to do medicine or I'm going to do litigation. I wanted to do law, actually.
Okay.
To do litigation because of my other background that I can tell you about if we have time. And then the third area was I was really interested in technology, and I taught myself programming. And the third area was an area of engineering called operations research. So ultimately, my story was that I took a lot of different kind of classes, and what happened with law is that I took this class I thought was perfect, interdisciplinary course. It was called Law and Medicine, and I said, what could be better for a guy who's on the cusp, can't decide between law and medicine, right?
Yeah, right.
And it was taught by an old-fashioned kind of professor. So if you're old enough to remember the old movie from the 70s called the Paper Chase, there was this old Harvard law professor who, anyhow, so it was a course, really interesting course. I loved it. I loved learning about these law cases. I'm thinking, this is it. And it turns out that you have to write, your whole grade was predicated on analyzing these medical legal cases. And I loved the thinking around that. It was fantastic. And I go through and do my analysis. Every time an analysis came around, I missed the point entirely of the case.
Oh, man.
Terrible. So I realized I have no future in this law stuff. And then in engineering, the problem is I had to take these advanced mathematics classes, and the people who were in those classes were just not the people you want to really hang out with, if you know what I mean. So that sort of went by the wayside. And then and then it was medicine, and I turned out I liked biology, the introductory bio course, much more than I thought I was. And I wound up actually majoring in it. And I said, you know what, I do really like this medicine stuff. There was one other deciding factor, actually. So I said there was something in my background that made me want to do litigation.
That's right.
Not because I was an argumentative kid, I don't think. But it was because I spent most of my life from the time I was 5.5, literally, I started doing magic. But for me, it wasn't a
Oh my
passing
goodness.
phase. It was going to be my career. And before I made the conscious decision to apply to colleges, that was going to be my career. I performed all over the place all the time. It was a big part of my life.
Wow.
Yeah. So my mother said, when I told her after coming home from a magic convention, I said, "Mom, I think this is what I want to do full time." And she said to me, she didn't freak out, to her credit. She said, "Danny, I think that's great. You should do magic because you're good at it. But maybe you should do something else first so you have something to fall back on, just in case things don't work out." So I went to college and did all that stuff, and that was it. But the magic that took me into that's why I was interested in litigation, because I figured I could perform. It would be great. So I want to be on a stage. I was in shows all the time.
Yes.
Okay, so then the last thing that pushed me into medicine as a career was the following. I was taking a course in psychology, and I read a paper. It was a pretty important paper, I guess, at the time. It was by I believe it was by Binet, we have these Sanford-Binet test, the intelligence test that we use. It's called the Sanford-Binet test. So Binet wrote this paper that was called Prestidigitation and Psychology. And in that paper, he argued that that the physician, in large part, I misstated the article. It was prestidigitation and medicine. That's what it was.
Okay.
And it was. He said that in large part the physician must have many of the skills of the magician, because he must inspire confidence. And this was like mind blowing to me. I said, wait a minute. You mean all these skills I have in magic could be applied to medicine?
Wow.
And I thought it was great. So that was the final thing, pushed me into medicine. And then when it came to really digging into it and trying to decide on a career as I'm going through my training, that was interesting too. So even though it was a neurologist and it was diagnostic thinking and neurology that sort of pushed me into this career, since one of the things we're talking about today is primary care, I'll take that to the next level. The reason that I chose primary care medicine is because what I liked about neurology was the diagnostic process, right? Relationships with patients, all that was really good and important. What I didn't like about it was that everybody was so horribly, horribly sick, and just chronic diseases and not enough variety, frankly. So what I found in internal medicine was that I could have, all the interesting diagnostic work that I liked. In primary care medicine, you actually see patients over time. You're building a relationship with them,
Yes.
and I just really fell in love with internal medicine. I thought it was just terrific.
Wow, Dr. Sands, we love the Meet the Doctor, and we love hearing about these stories. And your story about, your passion about magic, and then reading that journal article, and that things kind of all coming together. It's a wonderful story. I actually, it reminds me of a story from my cousin. I have a cousin who's an attorney, and he loved being a stand-up comic. Lives in New York, and but he couldn't make a living. He couldn't make a living, and actually, we kind of were the similar approach of the family. Where it's like, oh my gosh, he graduated from high school a year early, finished college 3 years early, and he's saying, "Oh, I want to be a stand-up comedian." We kept kind of pushing him towards, he was an argumentative kind of person, brilliant guy, and thought, pursue law. He ended up finishing law school, passed, the tri-state bar exam, and he said he really wanted to pursue being a stand-up comic. And he tried to do it, didn't work. And we said, well, why don't you fall back on the original career? So he's still doing the stand-up comic on the side, comedy stuff on the side, but he's got his career as an actor. Now, are you doing any magic shows on the side?
I was going to say there's a little epilogue to the story.